learners, a very warm welcome to all of you for this session. Today we will be discussing types of human trafficking. Till now, we have understood what is human trafficking, what are the reasons for trafficking or what are the causes for trafficking, and now we are going to understand what are the types of human trafficking. So, human trafficking can be for sexual exploitation, human trafficking can be for labor exploitation, human trafficking can be for drugs, for committing crime, for medical exploitation, for purposes of entertainment and sports, to use, children as soldiers. Then now we will be discussing every type in detail. So if I talk about human trafficking for sexual exploitation, then trafficking can be because you want to have a prostitute, you want a prostitute. So a person will be trafficked and somebody will be trafficking that person. Then trafficking can be for sex tourism. Trafficking can be, for sending bites material on pornographic websites. So we find lot of, advertisements where, we see that if you want massage, if you want to have a content, if you want to chat online, then these are the options available. So what are these options? Are they legal options or in the guise of providing you a friend or a mate? These are offers for prostitution and kinds of sexual exploitation. Then sexual exploitation can be for marriage. We have just noticed, an incident of, a country wherein from one country to another country, 200 girls moved together, and later on when they were rescued, it was found out that every girl was there to be sold for marriage. So what kind of marriages we are thinking in terms of, purchasing and selling of girls? So the difference of, sex ratio has created lot of issues, lot of social issues, lot of, psychological issues and lot of barriers. So in terms of vulnerability, if you are vulnerable and you are not educated, you cannot make reasoned choice, then that leads to sexual exploitation. Then sexual exploitation can be for child marriage. We have seen, traditions of children getting married. We have a law which says that child marriage is prohibited in India. Still we see so many, communities giving child in marriage. So what is the fate of that child? Whether the child will be able to take reasoned decisions, whether the child is fully mature for marriage, whether that child will just enjoy the marital life, or whether that child will be physically abused, face mental trauma, will be, suffering because the child cannot take decisions, the child is not earning, dependent on somebody. First, the child is dependent on his parents and now the husband or his family. So can that child take a reasoned decision? Can that child say no to any kind of abuse? That is an issue of concern. So when we talk about prostitution, it is not that only it happens in the brothel homes. We have seen prostitution happening, in very big hotels, 5-star, 7-star hotels. We have seen prostitution happening in resorts, in massage parlors, in spa, in gyms, and then in, creches. So in, the protection homes, there are a lot of protection homes as per the different laws for protecting the victims and survivors. But sometimes we find cases where children are abused, girls are abused, even adults are abused in these protection homes. So if I talk about sex tourism, you must have seen, that if you want a partner for a week, that is available. So you don't have to be married, you don't have to be, having a companion to go out and enjoy. So if you want somebody for a week, for a day, for 3 days tour, foreign tour, national tour, whatever kind of tour you talk about, business tour. So in the name of business tour, foreign tour and national tours, we have seen people purchasing and, purchasing and selling people. So that is sex tourism. When we talk about pornography, we have seen that, there are so many places where we find that there is a caution that whenever you use a public place, a public washroom, a public changing room, then you have to be very cautious. Why you have to be cautious? Because there can be a hidden camera, there can be a hidden glass. So transparent glasses are there wherein, you can be recorded. So you have to be extra cautious. So pornography is a highest selling business, and if that is so, you are not aware that you are, a victim, a person who will be projected on these sites, and then, it can affect your reputation, your mental peace, and your family life. So this danger, is very uncommon to understand, but very common to happen. So we are not trained how should we behave when we are using, public spaces. In terms of usage of public spaces, we don't have awareness, we don't have, proper training, neither we are equipped with the technology to, understand that if there is a camera, if there is a hidden device which can record everything, then we have a age of smart TV, smart mobile, smart laptop. So in the recent case of Mumbai, we have just seen that somebody was taking bath. Inside the room, they had kept the laptop open, and then in the evening, they receive a mail that your photos will be viral if you do not provide me this much amount of money. So it is not, that you want to advertise, you want to be a part of these sites, but sometimes, because of your ignorance. And nowadays, we have seen that children are, doing studies from home. So they are using technology without knowing the technology barriers or the technological issues. So are we training our children? Are we having cyber expertise to handle the cases of children abuse? So if that says yes, it is good. If we have a software installed, where everything is safe, then it is good. If we have technical experts available with us, it is good. If the answer is no, which is the present situation, then we have to be cautious. In terms of, labor exploitation, we have seen that, trafficking is done for labor exploitation because we feel that we can have, cheap labor. There is lot of supply, the demand is less. So when we are so much populated, lot of people are unemployed, lot of people are below poverty line, then we get cheap labor. So in terms of cheap labor, when we find that the labor laws are violated, the working hours are not fixed, even in the hazardous employment, we are having children to work, we are having males and females working without safety equipments or following the safety standards as decided by the government. So that is only because we are vulnerable. So any person who is vulnerable will not be able to, dictate the terms of his service conditions. So service condition can only be decided, mutually if I am not vulnerable. If I am vulnerable, then I cannot take a reasoned choice. Sometimes, I have to just accept the offer and do the work. So working hours are there, but that is not followed in case of labor exploitation. So labor exploitation starts when you work in a dingy room, you work in a factory wherein you are inhaling so much of substances, you are using children in the factories, hazardous employment, or you are using male and female without safety precautions, even for factories where chemicals are produced or chemicals are stored. So what kind of prevention mechanism you should have, what kind of safety mechanism you should have is also missing. Then we have bonded labor. Somebody in my family had taken loan. Maybe my ancestors have taken loan and I am unemployed, I am still paying it. So I am working in that family for years along with my entire family. Still I am not able to repay the interest of that loan. Here comes the role of all the nationalized bank. Why did we go for nationalization of bank? To just stop this kind of abuse by the money lenders. But still India shows that we do not have the entire population having bank accounts. Even if people have bank accounts, it is very difficult to get agriculture loan or any other kind of loan. For getting 10,000 loan in India, it is a big difficulty. For getting 1 crore as a loan, it is so easy. So are we talking about right to equality in terms of the social system? If not, then this is a violation of our constitution law, fundamental rights, Article 14. Then we talk about domestic servitude. We need somebody to work in our domestic space, maybe as a helper, maybe to look after my child as a nanny, maybe to take care of my parents. So if that is my concern and I do not want to pay them well, I just think that just by giving them 3 times meal or a minimum amount of survival, that will suffice for their entire life. So this is domestic servitude, where you don't pay the real prices. The market prices are not paid as per the minimum wages act. We do not pay, but we try to earn profit out of somebody's vulnerability. We find so many beggars standing on the streets taking alms, ladies with small children abused, drug abused. The children keep sleeping and we just pay them alms because we have so much of morality concerns. We want to do charity to these children. What kind of charity we are doing to these children by paying alms is a big question mark. Begging is prohibited in India, so I will again repeat that please do not pay any kind of money on the streets, because this creates more demand for begging, for people being trafficked as beggars. Then comes the hazardous employment. We have Article 21, which talks about dignity and worth. We have, Article 14, which talks about equality rights. We have Article 23. We have so many articles, 21A about right to education. Still, we find people in hazardous employment. The children who work in chemical industries, have their entire nails, we can see the nails, blue or black or rubbed. Half of the nails are missing of so many children who are working in the beedi industry or who are working in the bangle industry. So there is a big concern to be addressed. And if we talk about hazardous employment, where as per the law the child should not be employed, then the Factories Act, the labor laws play a very important role in preventing that from happening and punishing the violators of law, so that strict action can be taken against them. Then human trafficking for drugs. Drugs can be sold and drugs can be purchased. You must have seen so many, schools where drugs cases have been reported. Drug for no voice. If you are, drugged, you will not say no or yes because you are out of your senses. So in that situation, it is very easy for a trafficker to get work done. It can be in terms of labor, it can be in terms of sex, it can be in terms of illegal activities or anything else. For violence and abuse, I have to abuse you, maybe sexually, and then I drug you, so you will not raise your voice, you will not be conscious, so I can do whatever you want, whatever I want, and go away. So drugs can be there in cases of sexual offenses. Then for addiction, we have seen so many, victims coming up and speaking up that when they were forced in prostitution, then they were drugged continuously so that they, they do not raise a voice, they do not say no, till they kept on saying no for sexual exploitation. They were drugged and later on it was their habit. So when you develop a habit, it is very difficult to leave it. Next is, human trafficking for committing crime. Trafficking for illegal offenses. Have you seen small children, standing on the streets trying to cut the glasses of the car? Small children, if you talk to a beat police officer, he will say that small children carry blades below their tongue. So they know that there is a Juvenile Justice Act which will protect children below the age of 18 years. So children are used in illegal activities, even females and males. Young adults are used for illegal activities and the earning goes to the trafficker. Then I have just discussed that beggary, is a very profitable business. You just give wounds to people, you just harm somebody, and then you make him or her stand on the road and people will be tempted, out of pity or, out of their emotional and psychological, concern, that they will give them alms. So if you find a good looking beggar perfectly fine to work, you will never give that person anything. But if you find broken arms, lot of abuses, or maybe, torn clothes, standing in sun, then you tend to give alms. So what kind of, exploitation goes around this entire racket of beggary needs to be addressed strictly, and we as commoners should not pay beggars. Then trafficking for medical exploitation. It can be for organ trade. We find instances, wherein you go for X operation and you come to know that a particular organ was taken out during that process. Some people buy the organs and some people sell the organ. In the process, the donor, without proper medical aid, after post-operative care, is not there, so he dies or she dies. Then trafficking for blood. Out of your vulnerability, you are not able to sustain yourself, so you go and give your plasma and blood. Or for surrogacy. So we have a legislation on this. Still, if that legislation is not implemented properly for organ transplantation, for surrogacy, then these people, try to get in between and earn profit out of somebody's need and somebody's vulnerability. Then trafficking for the purpose of entertainment and sports. Trafficking for wild sport, a bull fighting with a human being, a lion fighting with a human being. What kind of pleasure, I get out of it, I fail to understand. Then there are dangerous ways of being entertained. So if that is a kind of sport which entertains you, that reflects your mindset and your upbringing. So we have to change our mindset, because human beings should not be treated as commodities but treated with respect and dignity. So finding thrill or pleasure by seeing blood or hurt or wound of somebody, then that is a psychological disorder, and I will not call it a pleasure. It is a psychological need which needs to be addressed by the psychologist, and this is prohibited in India and should be handled strictly by the stakeholders to implement the law against it and make it enforceable, so that somebody's life is not somebody's pleasure. Then child soldiers, you cannot have child soldiers. Still we find child soldiers in disturbed area across the world, because child soldiers are very easy to train. A child's mind is a clear slate. So when the child's mind is a clear slate, so you can train him up as per your expectation, as per your need, and the child has to perform. It is very easy to handle the child. It is very easy to get the maximum output from the child, because the child has lot of potential to perform. The child is very energetic. So if his energy is not utilized in a positive direction and used by the traffickers as child soldiers, then they work as spy. They work for meeting the sexual demands of the soldiers. They work as caregivers. They work as entertainment, or they just try to carry some kind of information, some kind of arms and ammunitions from one place to another, because it is believed that the local agency will not doubt a child if the child moves. So if the child is moving alone from one place to another, the local agency will not be alarmed by his or her movement. So the children are being used as child soldiers in disturbed areas, and this is a serious issue. If we can just implement the Constitution of India and protect these children, rehabilitate these children into the society, then it will be a big blessing, because we have the maximum number of young population in India at present. So today we have discussed types of human trafficking. I hope you have understood the session. If you have any doubts, you can just write to me an email, you can WhatsApp me, or in the discussion box you just send me a message. I will get back to you. Stay blessed. Thank you for this session.